Friends and family, I am outraged. I am so outraged, in fact, that my only resort is to make a video on the internet to vent my frustration. And I'm frustrated by conservative media's backlash against and criticism against Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. I got to see the movie on the Friday night of opening weekend. I thought it was an excellent movie, really enjoyed the cinematic experience. Please go see it in cinemas, IMAX if you can. And Christopher Nolan, in his typical fashion, does something that is absolutely genius in this movie, and I'll explain that. But, what is this criticism that the conservatives are launching against Christopher Nolan's movie? And please note that, I'm talking about the conservative backlash because that's the sort of stuff that's on my algorithm, like these are my guys. So they criticized the movie mainly for three things, which were all criticisms already present before the movie even premiered, right? So the first one's going to be around casting decisions, stuff like, mainly Ellen Page, who is a scrawny, transgender identifying actress being cast as one of the Greek soldiers. They were expecting it to be Achilles, and it turned out to be Sinon. They were expecting it to be a main character, and that was the outrage. The second source of criticism is going to be regarding historical inaccuracy, stuff like the armor being inaccurate for the historical period and place and whatever. And then the third criticism is really around Emily Wilson's feminist translation of the Odyssey being used. And I am here to tell you that the conservatives are really missing it on this one, and that's quite unfortunate. There is one or two conservatives who I've noted actually get what the movie is about, actually see what Christopher Nolan is doing here. The first one is going to be Jonathan Peugeot and Christopher Knowles. These two seem to be the only two guys that actually get what Christopher Nolan is doing here, right? So let's quickly rush through these three criticisms, because I just really want to get you to go watch this movie. Like, if you are a Christian, if you are conservative, if you are against the Hollywood woke agenda and ideology, this movie is for you, contrary to what you might expect. Okay, so the first criticism, the casting decisions that were made, right? So the first one, Ellen Page, the transgender, the woke poster child of Hollywood, being cast as what people were expecting to be Achilles or expecting to be some sort of main character in the movie. Guys, it's a 3-hour-long movie. Ellen Page gets, I think, like 7 minutes of screen time. That's me being generous. She's not that important. And her character, I'm going to explain it. It's brilliant. It really is brilliant. But let's first start off by Christopher Nolan setting the tone of this movie. Right. Early on, there's this training scene with Telemachus, who is Odysseus' son, portrayed by Tom Holland. And he gets trained by his mentor, whose name is Mentor, and Emmaus or something like that, who's coaching him there. And they're training sword fighting. And the advice that is given to Telemachus is to open up his belly, open up his chest, to seem vulnerable and invite in the attack from his enemy. And then when his enemy strikes, to use that against him in a counterattack, to appear weak and then to strike. And this is quite significant. There's a reason Christopher Nolan does this. Guys, let's keep in mind who Christopher Nolan is and the kinds of movies that he's put out in the past. And, if he wants something to be historically accurate, it is. If, every frame has a meaning, has an intention behind it, the guy is genius. So let's not think that these sorts of scenes and the decisions that are made are just coincidence or purely stylistic, right? Okay. So it's this idea that, okay, we invite them in, we invite them to attack, and that's our opportunity. It's the same idea with the whole Trojan horse, where the Trojan horse is this gift that is being given by, the protagonist and his people to the enemy, being the Trojans, to kind of admit defeat and surrender. It's like, here's this massive horse statue that we've built to you to admit our defeat. You can put that up in your town square and brag about how you won the war. And then, surprise, surprise, once the Trojans bring the horse into their city gates, because, so far the army has been unable to penetrate the walls of Troy for like 10 years. And now the Trojans bring this horse in themselves. And surprise, surprise, a bunch of soldiers jump out of the horse and are able to attack the city from the inside. They've penetrated the walls by allowing the enemy, through a trick, to invite them in themselves, right? This is, a major plot point. This is literally what you'll like in internet language. We talk about a Trojan horse, where it's a virus that you download because you think it's something that you want on your computer. You think it's like, ooh, cool mouse pointer pack, and then you download it and it's a virus. It's like, I did this to myself, right? That's the Trojan horse. And that is what Christopher Nolan is doing with this movie. That is what he's doing with the casting decisions, the stylistic decisions, and the feminist translation, in fact. Right? Allow me to explain. So Ellen Page is cast as Sinon, who is the character not present in the original source material, but added through later traditions, especially like present in Dante's Inferno, right? So Sinon is the character who Odysseus uses to sell the lie of the Trojan horse to the Trojans. So it's, originally the character Sinon is portrayed as being in on the scam, being in on it to sell the lie. In Nolan's version, Sinon is not aware of the trick that he is involved in playing. He is not aware of the fact that there are soldiers inside of the horse and that he is being sacrificed to gain this advantage. And this is a metaphor for Christopher Nolan using Ellen Page. The woke poster child is being used to sell the lie to the woke Hollywood enemies that, this is actually a gift. You actually want to bring this into Hollywood, bring this into your cinemas. Come watch this movie, nominated for an Oscar. This is, look, we cast a transgender actress. This is your movie. And then, bait and switch, wham bam. It's actually not. It's a Christian movie, guys. I'll explain that like very shortly, but I want you to go watch the movie and look for it yourself, right? It's gonna be, there's this scene in the movie where Odysseus has a conversation with Sinon from the underworld after Sinon was killed in the process of selling the lie, and then in his grave he finds out that actually he was just used. He was killed as a trick. He was deceived by the person that he was loyal to. And no jokes, that conversation could literally just be a conversation between Christopher Nolan and Ellen Page, where Ellen Page, the real life actress, imagine her realizing that she was just used to sell the trick to Hollywood, to sell the movie to the woke mob. And Odysseus is like, yeah, sorry, but I really had to do this because I needed you to believe the lie. And you can literally imagine that being a conversation between Christopher Nolan and Ellen Page. All right, another cool one is going to be like Lupita Nyong'o being cast as Helen of Troy. Right, so Lupita Nyong'o is very much a feminist. I saw this video clip of her saying that, yeah, she would like to have a conversation with Homer and ask him how he feels about the fact that these women are getting so much screen time and being portrayed as so important to the narrative when he excluded them and gave them such little time and importance in the original story. And it's funny to hear Lupita Nyong'o say that because she gets like 5 minutes in the movie and she literally portrays two characters. So, in a 3-hour movie, she gets like 5 minutes. So it's ironic, but it just shows once again, like all these woke actors thought they were going to be the heroes. But they were Sinon. They were characters being used to trick the enemy into letting the Trojan horse in. And that's like, it's so meta. This is what Christopher Nolan typically does, and it's brilliant. Regarding, the whole thing about the cast being not all white, my feelings around that, just shortly, is like, I don't really care. I think Himesh Patel, an Indian guy who plays Odysseus's first mate, is literally the best actor in the movie. It's not that the others were bad. Matt Damon was good. Everybody who's Anne Hathaway, like, she was good. Everybody was good. I just think Himesh Patel was the best. He was brilliant. And I think for a modern audience, the diversity works, especially when you just consider in the broader fact that Christopher Nolan wants this movie to be broadly accepted. He wants this movie to reach the left side of the aisle, and you need to kind of sell out in a way to the woke mob to do that. And I think, especially considering the fact that it's a fictional tale and the Trojans weren't real people and Helen of Troy is not a real person, she's just a character. Athena is just a character. It's not a real goddess that's white. It's just like, it's fine if Zendaya gets to play the character. I think she does it quite well in any case, right? So I don't have major problems with that. I don't think it's important to keep historical accuracy when it's a fictional story based on, it's all fiction, right? But you can disagree with me on that point and still agree that Christopher Nolan uses this as a device to achieve the trick that he's playing, just like the main character, just like the whole theme of the movie. All right. Then the next major criticism, and then also just on the historical inaccuracies, right? The armor that's being used. People criticize Agamemnon's armor because it kind of looks like Batman. It's this black armor. It looks very villainous. There's this golden spine hanging from his helmet. Looks really badass. And it's very historically inaccurate. 100%. It's fine. It's art, right? It's supposed to portray meaning. It's not supposed to be true to a history that never happened in the first place. Right, so Agamemnon is portrayed as a villain. Like, if you see the armor and you know nothing else and you just see a photo of the character, you would imagine that he's the villain of the movie, when in fact, he's the boss of our protagonist. But he's portrayed in this way because Christopher Nolan wants to make sure that that this guy's the villain. Like, let this not be lost on you. The Trojans wear white armor, this clean white armor, which is typically what the good guys would look like. That's like how the elves in the Lord of the Ring look. And it serves a purpose. The purpose is to show that actually the Trojans are the good guys in this movie. and our protagonist is serving the bad guy. It's stylistic, it's artistic, and there's a reason for it. It's not supposed to be historically accurate, right? The last point of criticism, and I think this one's important, is going to be around the feminist translation of Emily Wilson being used. And I mean, I don't disagree that her translation is definitely a more feminist rendition of the source material as opposed to a true translation of the source text. But I also don't think that Christopher Nolan really falls into the trap of portraying the movie in a more feminist light. For that matter, I think the movie is actually Christian, right? So when we look at the first thing is going to be the source text, like the original Odysseus, his original sin is his pride and his hubris, like his pride turning into hubris. The fact that he's so good, he's so brilliant, he's so able to outsmart everyone and win at everything he does, that actually leads to his downfall. Christopher Nolan's version of Odysseus is not like that. His cardinal sin is not his pride. He's actually a slightly more complex character who struggles with PTSD and guilt, which, if you think that is feminist, that a man can struggle with PTSD and guilt for the crimes that he committed during war, it's like, that's not feminist. That's real men. Real men return from war with PTSD. Real men, or well, any sort of thing that's like war in real life. We actually struggle with our consciences. If we hadn't, if our only problem was like pride with how good we are, that's such a hyper masculine, unrealistic sort of portrayal of men, which is the source material's version of Odysseus. And Nolan actually saves the character, and he turns him into a genuine hero who is able to overcome his flaws. And so this feminist translation is being held up once again as a Trojan horse. And what Christopher Nolan sneaks in, and I'm not going to spoil this because I want you to watch the movie and I want you to notice it for yourself. But what he sneaks in is a Christianized version of the Odyssey. So it's not true to the source material, because the source material is pagan and unchristian. Christopher Nolan's version is about self-sacrifice. It is about return of the king and restoration of law and order. It is about the family being reunited, and Odysseus, the character, does not get betrayed by any feminist narratives or subversions or anything like that. He is portrayed as a character who is heroic because of his love for his wife and his child, who is able to overcome his shortfalls in order to save the day at the end of the day. And this is in stark contrast to Hollywood's recent, and well, actually Hollywood's always, this is how they've always portrayed men. The dad in the sitcom is always a blubbering idiot. He's always the butt of the joke. He's always so unaware of what's going on around him. And he's what's the word? His balls have been cut off. What's the word for that? There's a word for that. But that's the version of men and fathers that Hollywood typically portrays. And then the women are just like the best just because they're women, It's like that's usually what Hollywood sells you. This movie is not that. This movie has real characters in a very mythical world, but it's real and it's true. And there's this scene where Odysseus is finally making his way back home. The whole movie is about Odysseus getting back home, and try as he might, he's unable to. He can't get back. And finally, through giving up in faith to Zeus, that's how he's ultimately able to manage it. He has to give himself over in faith to his god. And Zeus in this movie is an absolute stand-in for the Christian God. Like, Zeus's law is treating your neighbor and even the beggar with dignity and respect. You know, this is the Christian morality of treating others as you would be treated yourself. This is Christ's own command of treating, how you treat the least of these is how you treat Christ himself. It's the Christian teaching of, some of us would have entertained angels without knowing it. And so it's important how we treat people. This is a Christian message being portrayed through Greek mythology. Guys, it's a brilliant movie. I really invite you guys to go watch it. And please let me know what you think about it. I'd like to talk to this about this movie a lot more. But for the constraints of time, I'll stop now. But yeah, watch it and let me know what you think.